What happened to the chorus? I thought we were gonna do like a mixing one way of hi.
Hi. Welcome to In Frame.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to In Frame.
Oh, oh, that's so cool.
So
Can I do that
it's
too?
quite interesting. Yes, you can do that.
Okay, okay,
try it
okay.
again?
Yeah.
Let's try it again.
Okay, right.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to
Come to you,
In
reframe.
Frame.
Oh, very cool. Very cool.
Yes, no, thank you so much for taking time to join us. My name is Dixon. I have Veronica and Chad with me, and today we have Akheel Khan with us. And today's conversation is just basically a pickup on our first episode, which was really interesting and engaging. And actually, a lot of people really sort of partake in the conversations after we posted it. And it was really about AI and authorship in the architectural industry, where we find ourselves and what role does AI play um, in the industry, and do we really actually own the authorship of designs as we sort of utilize AI, you know? So that was our first episode, which was really quite nice conversations. And so today we thought it would be nice to engage. We also use AI, on a daily sort of basis. However, we wouldn't say that we are developing maybe AI tools yet, or but we know that you are really interested in that aspect, and you are kind of really diving into not just AI as a tool, but as actually as machine learning and all that. And so we really wanted to have an opportunity to sort of chat with you. And so we just want to say thank you for accepting our invitation and joining us today to have a conversation. But before that, maybe we would like you to sort of describe yourself, and maybe also a little bit about your journey into machine learning and what really drew you into AI, and what have you discovered as an architect. Maybe a little bit about yourself, and then maybe from there we can dive into deeper conversations.
Of course, Dixon, thank you for having me on In Frame. I really like the starting part, and I feel it's a vibe. So I'm very glad to be part of this frame uh, today. I also wanted to share that I appreciate that you thought to ask me about a specific topic, because at the moment it is one of the most widely discussed topics, with the least amount of people that have background or expertise commenting and giving opinions on it. And that's because the technology is widely available. It's probably the most widely available technology that there has been since the internet. And I feel that it is important that we have conversations like this to help us gain more accurate perceptions of what's going on. So I'm Akheel Khan, and there's actually three places people know me from. A lot of people know me from An Architect. It's the organization that I created some years ago, about 8 years ago. And our mission was to make the field of architecture accessible. The tagline is making architecture accessible. Um, some people also know me from Toyota. I used to run the AI unit at Toyota as a systems researcher. It was my responsibility to look at strategy, overall company strategy, and to also focus on where the future is going and how can we get there, not only with artificial intelligence, but how can artificial intelligence be a strategic mechanism for getting into the future. And that's where I know Chadwin from. And lastly, a lot of people know me from the professional practice exam. It isn't a secret that I am on the panel of the professional practice examiners. I used to lead the team at one stage. I can't tell you exactly when, but my responsibility is to set, or was to set, professional practice examination papers that are relevant for the field. And so you'll see that part of my work was to assist in helping more people to pass the exams through writing content and material that will allow them to do so. So like the official material for the professional practice exam, but also to make sure that what the exam is doing is making us relevant for the field ahead. And so you'll see that the integration of artificial intelligence as well as general emerging technologies and perhaps more painfully, the inclusion of financial literacy into the architectural professional curriculum. And so that was part of my mandate, my responsibility, and what I contributed to. So those are the three places people mostly know me from, although I've been around. Currently, I'm running a startup called the Institute of Building Design, where we are the institute to go to for professional education to not only stay compliant, but to make sure that you are going to be relevant in the changing world. And that is what I lead on a daily basis. I am part of a startup pre-seed accelerator called Founder Institute, which is a global startup accelerator, and I'm part of the local chapter. And so just so you have an understanding there, we are attempting to build mass scale impactful solutions that will change industries, and that's what my current daily work is about. I'm not sure how much more we'll get into on that, but Dixon, to answer your question more directly, I found myself in machine learning in specific roughly in 2019, although I have been researching emerging technologies from 2015. My focus areas was computational design, artificial intelligence, and extended realities, of which the three, I didn't know which one would come first. As a wave that would hit. And I was fortunate enough to get some insider knowledge in 2019 of where the field was heading, of AI in specific. And then I took it upon myself not only to conduct research, but also to change my career trajectory before the wave actually did come, which landed around about late 2022 or early 2022, rather late 2022 is maybe the explosion for ChatGPT. But that means that I do have some better knowledge than most architectural designers on what's going on. And I hope that's sufficient as a starting point, Dixon.
No, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. I think it really give us an insight into really who you are.
Thanks. So I think just to add on to that a little bit more, you asked about machine learning in specific and what was it that maybe led to me there. I have always had an inclination and an inside knowledge of what the field is about. In roughly about 2010, I attempted to do studies in computer science, and I then moved on to focus on architecture. But I have generally known what these things entail, and so I can sort of see how these things progress as they are progressing. But one key event that happened was I always knew I should have been doing something there that could have benefited the field. But in 2019, when generative design was released on Autodesk Revit, I realized, well, you know what, I think now is the time. And that's when I made full focus dive. So I'd say that's maybe a bit more of a pivotal moment for me.
After you dived in, hi Akheel again, Veronica here.
Yes.
After you dived into machine learning, what did you then discover architects were missing?
What a good question. I feel, and I've always felt, that architects have missed in general the ability to see themselves as polymaths. Although we know we are those things, it's not a necessarily celebrated feature. The thing that is maybe celebrated is design. And I don't think that's where our greatest value is, in my opinion. Myself, roughly about 11 years ago, I attempted to celebrate some of that notion by leaving the field of architecture. And I was actually working for the largest supplier of boys and men's clothing to Mr. Price. The name of the company was USI Clothing. I was a clothing designer. And I used to run the production of clothing, 11 to 30,000 units at a time per month. And at that time, I began to realize that I think our capabilities are maybe cut short by ourselves. And I have since then, and even before then, attempted to be in many design-related or systems-related fields. And I think maybe the thing architects do very frequently is, I study this, and this is what I should do for the rest of my life. And I don't think that's a very healthy way to view yourself, by trying to focus your entire identity on one thing.
Yeah. You use the term polymath. Sorry.
Yeah,
Repeat.
polymath.
Now you have to tell us what that is.
What a responsibility for me to bear. But I'll tell you.
No pressure.
No pressure because.
No, I was saying there's no pressure, but I'm just saying you can take your time and and letting us know incrementally.
Okay, great. So a polymath, as defined by a number of people, but if you guys know Kevin Bingham from, is quite a prominent name in local South African industry. He mentions that architects are polymaths, and he had written a paper roughly about 2020, 2021 discussing the nature of an architect to be able to do many things. And the polymath, some people say it's also referred to as a Renaissance man. I'd say, though, that what it maybe a better description of it is the versatility of a human being. That if you are inclined towards a specific thing that you are good at, it probably means you'll be good at other things as well. And so you shouldn't just feel that you should stay siloed in one place. And it also means that your contribution to the world, you don't really know after you die what your greatest contribution would have been. And so you should attempt to do it as broadly as possible, because you're not really sure what would be the most beneficial outcome for humanity, for the life that you have lived. And so you must be capable of doing many things, that all of us are, but the age of the specialization sort of maybe focused people along, saying stay in one career track. And whilst that's helpful in a system that's based on the Industrial Revolution, I don't think it's particularly helpful for a human being to silo themselves as one particular thing. I hope that kind of gives a good starting point.
Yeah, no, it definitely. I think maybe I would ask then, in you deciding to go in this route, do you think that a part and parcel of that jump was due to any maybe I guess industry issues that you faced in architecture, or do you feel that the jump was gradual and very decisive, not as a reaction to maybe some gripes within the industry, but maybe more just towards your interests just shifting some elsewhere? So where do you think you find yourself? Is it finding some issues in the industry and having to gravitate somewhere else and look elsewhere, or was it more towards, this is my interest now and I'm turning a little bit towards the left?
Such a well-framed question. I must say, firstly, I am a human being, and that means that I have many dimensions and parts to me. And I have always been, and perhaps even in the choice of focusing to study on architecture for the while that I did, was because I have been in search or in the pursuit of meaning. And meaning is found, from what I could tell over my time in trying to find meaning in many places, it is found through suffering. And suffering allows you to be able to transcend your own self-involved perception of what's going on into a broader empathetic reality of what people experience. And so my behavior is a reaction to the industry as a result of the predispositions I've been given. I have always been able to draw from as long as I can speak, I think. I'm not sure which one came first, right? But yeah. I have also been fortunate enough to be able to, as a result of drawing, make the inaccessible accessible. And secondly, I also happen to have been good at rallying resources towards a goal. And so those two, let's call it gifts that I felt I had from a young age, I do feel it's my responsibility to discharge of them well. But with that said, that also means that the beginning stages of your life is very self-focused and maybe selfish, because you know things about yourself that you You are constantly in the pursuit of excellence, not really considering the impact it might have on other people around you. It's a very me thing, and I need to do this, and it's all about me. But as I matured as an adult, and I'll say, fortunately, after meeting my wife, I became a more well-rounded person. And I think that I have been fortunate that I have a supportive family, but I also have had a fair share of difficult times that I've had to navigate. Those difficulties is the things that made me decide on taking an unconventional career path, if you would call it that way. And I think that might be somewhat of a long answer, but I hope it made sense, Veronica.
Yeah, all I heard was your wife is the reason why you're successful.
I like that.
Wow.
That's all I heard.
Unbelievable. That's all she heard from that whole explanation. That the wife is, well, I think I would probably also say the same. I mean, I think they bring this sort of a different direction that sometimes we tend to kind of do everything, and they sort of bring a different sort of direction in our lives. So I do get it. I'll give her that. I'll give the woman that. I think they really do bring direction. You know what comes to my mind is I think we were on a panel together at UJ with the Department of Architecture, trying to discuss the implementation of AI. I think that was the first time I met you, Akhil, in terms of I've met you, I've sort of met you before. We knew each other,
Yes,
but on a panel, that was the first time
yes,
we were on sort of a panel together. Um, and I think there was something that you had mentioned that has stick with me. And you often say that when we say that AI is a tool, it's almost like misleading, right?
yes. I
And I would
said
like
that.
you to sort of touch. I would like you to touch on that because I think a lot of us and a lot of the practice just see AI as a tool.
Yeah.
So what do you mean when you say it's not a tool, or is it a tool and something else, or what is it actually?
So Dixon, I did meet you there when Dr. Finzi Saidi invited a whole host of people who have dabbled in some form of AI across the country to give some input on what is this thing. And at that time, I'd already left Toyota. But if Chadwin remembers, that is a bit of my tagline, that AI is not a tool. And although maybe some people might say I'm being unnecessary, what's the word, extra, eh? I'm being extra about it. But the reason is maybe a good starting point for a conversation, but it really does speak to two realities. One is an economic reality. The market doesn't understand what it is that we have, and the closest way to explain it is to say that it's a tool, which therefore means it's an application, which therefore means that I can download it and plug it into my life as needed. That is the first reality that is happening. The market doesn't fully understand what it is that this new technology is. And the second reality that it speaks to is that when people engage in new technology and they don't understand what it is, they often attempt to explain it in ways that they feel is fit for them. That doesn't mean that's what it is. It means that's how I perceive it. Artificial intelligence, if you look at it as a holistic thing, it's very well defined if you just watched maybe a couple more YouTube videos from credible people. It's very, very well defined in terms of what it is and what it is not. But in 2019, I published a book on architecture called What is Architecture? Understanding Architecture. And it was aimed to address the problems that I experienced when I was on campus to make architecture accessible. But the end goal of the book was to give a utilitarian description of architecture. Whereas if you go to Wikipedia, it's taxonomy, it's a description of the category it fits in. It's the art and science of designing buildings. But that's not useful to an architect. And for anyone that wants to do something with that, how does it help you? And so the definition that I had proposed is that architecture is the physical realization of human ritual with a little bit more things afterwards, but I'll say that's the core feature of it. And that is a utilitarian definition I can do something with, and that is a fundamental truth. With artificial intelligence, to say it's a tool is you describing what you wish to use it as. But what it is, according to Patrick Winston from MIT, he mentions that AI are algorithms which are enabled by, and he has a whole long story, but really what it's sort of saying is that these are representations of human beings, or the ways that the methods that we use to communicate. And these representations are algorithmically formulated, and that formulation allows computers to mimic human thinking, perception, and action. That's a very, very long definition, but it's useful because you begin to understand, oh, it's algorithms that are attempting to explain the human condition. That's what it's about. And so when people say it's a tool, what you're trying to say is you're using it as a means to an end. You're very welcome to say, in fact, anything is a tool. If you go to a car can get you from A to B. That's a means to an end. That is a tool, right? But you don't necessarily say, oh, my car is a tool. It's going to get me to work. You know, you don't really discuss things in that capacity. And so what I'm saying is that there is what it is definitively. It is software, but it's a new type of software that exists. It's a self-revising software. And the analogy I like to give is that it's an autonomous probability engine. And if you look at it in that way, you start to see, oh, okay, so it's aimed at giving me the probabilities of outcomes, some sort of prediction. It can give me variations of that. So what you could almost call alternate realities or iterations. And then I must make a decision on this information I have on how I wish to behave and how I wish to act. Now you start to see it as a method to augment your thinking, as a capacity expander, but never do you see it as a thing that does for you. The qualification for a tool, if you have to think about it in a very common sense way, is that a tool, or maybe common sense is not a good word, in a very, very relatable way, is that a tool is always predictable, you have full control over it, and it's replicable. There's a bit more things, but the thing we're dealing with now is not that. It's not fully replicable. You can't fully control it. And the thing, you can't always replicate the results. Those are the underlying qualifications for a tool. Like a hammer, you can always expect it to do the same things.
Yeah.
That's not what we have here. So that's part of the reason I feel this is a misleading idea, but it is the only one that people feel, I guess, comfortable discussing. It's also because it's the only way people can engage with the technology they don't understand. So I don't blame anyone, but I have to point out that it is inaccurate and it starts to become misleading, because then you see it as the same as Revit or other software that you can consistently use. That's not what we have here.
How, in a practical sense, for a student or someone coming into this field, how they would define architecture as this method of creation, utilize AI in that methodology?
I would say in response to that, Chadwin, that I don't have definitive answers, but in my experience, which I'll tell you about now, I have been very fortunate to visit many firms and also lecture at universities. In fact, I, at the School of Explorative Architecture, had led the first machine learning institute in South Africa for the architectural profession. And in my time doing that, I didn't attempt to say, guys, use Midjourney and this to achieve an outcome. I said, bring your problems. And all the students have to bring their problems. And the qualifications for the problem is that it had to be meaningful, it had to be painful, and it had to be something that would keep you up at 2 in the morning because you felt that if you didn't address this problem, it would hurt you in some degree, or it would be something on your mind consistently. Now we touch on a real thing here, that's human perception. And so they had to bring the problems, and I taught them what you might call 3 majors in the time I had with them. One is first principles thinking. That is the underlying method for any type of problem solving across the board, wherever you're doing it. You must understand the thing from first principles. So that's what I taught them. The second was I taught them the fundamentals of what is happening when you program a computer. Everything from how an electron is the first form of artificial life, to it moving across a circuit board, to then it becoming zeros and ones via the transistors and compilers, into becoming software. And then software, the analogy for that is that it's about the flow of data or programming. So I taught them fundamentally what is software, because that is what AI is. And then lastly, I taught them about machine learning. And when I taught them those three fundamental concepts, they then, over this period, it was a eight-week period, 5 to 8 week period, within 3 days or 4 days, they had to build a solution using their newfound understanding of these things to their problem. And they each created an answer that addressed their problem. Some of them created project management platforms. Some of them created automation platforms via Revit. Some of them created ways to iterate different outcomes of their project. Some of them created things to help them on the modules they were suffering in, like structures. And they say, I have this building, I don't know what's the appropriate structure. So the way that I applied it, and I believe is the most valuable way, is to understand the problems you have from a very deep place and have domain knowledge, specific knowledge about that field. And then you are able, and then you marry your understanding of what this technology is to help you solve that. Because there could be another way that's not AI related to solve it, but artificial intelligence can assist in giving you the various outcomes and iterations. But that's my approach, and I have definitely found that to be successful. In fact, so successful that I now train professionals at the Institute of Building Design to do the exact same thing that I do with students. But they bring their problems from firms, and they create the solutions together within a 5-week period, but only 3 days of building. It's a very strict time limit to showcase the power of artificial intelligence to help you solve something in a very short amount of time. I was actually at a large firm yesterday, and at the firm they mentioned about 10, 20 years ago, they attempted to solve the same problem one of the participants that they sent to me was doing. They took about 3 months to solve it to some degree. Some decades ago, it took 3 days to build that solution now. And that you can see is a magnitude of order greater to solve problems than we've had before. Chadwin, I don't know if that answers your question, but does it make sense?
No, I hear you, and I think the way you are approaching AI, and especially within the architectural realm, is that it is like you're saying, and maybe choosing the words correctly, is that it goes beyond just a tool. It is a methodology that you integrate within your thinking. Is essentially what you kind of like alluding to. Is that the notion of it just being a tool and ending there is kind of doing it at a service.
Very, very well articulated, Sharon. Even me, I must write that down now, right? Sharon says it's a methodology, and you are doing a disservice. Very, very good stuff. Thanks, Chadwin.
Because teaching, I like the fact that you're teaching the students that it needs to solve a specific problem within that timeline.
Yeah, that is the focus, Chadwin. So a lot of people approach artificial intelligence in this way, and the things that they often ask is, what's the best tool for this? What's the best platform? And then I say, but you missed the point if that's what you're looking for. Like, there are 4 or 5 very popular mainstream models, and those mainstream models are the common ones we know, but they're very specific. So a large language model is really a machine's interpretation of how human beings speak language. You might say that the representation of language is in numbers and letters, and if you assign statistical weighting to it, the machine can pick up the architecture of meaning. It picks up what is meaningful to human beings, and so that's a large language model. You have diffusion models, which are primarily used for image generation. You have world models, which in itself to some degree contain video models, and then you have multimodal models, which sort of join all these things together. Those are really the only 4 popular types. There's others, but that's the popular types. And if you look at any of the 1001 AI platform and applications, you'll see they are just not variations. They are just branded products of the same thing. And so then I often say, like, I think that if you are arguing which is better, Coke or Pepsi, at the end of the day, you're still drinking soda water. It's a preference thing, a branded preference. But you need to understand, for the problem I'm solving, is my problem a language problem? Is my problem a vision problem? What is the type of problem, and what are the representations needed to deal with it? So in our field, our representations are BIM models, or you might say some sort of three-dimensional geometry. That is the representations of how we express, how we solve problems. Models are simulations of reality based on those representations. And so you want to say, if I want to use an artificial intelligence model for designing a building, I can't go to an image generator. I can't go to a large language model. It is inherently a spatial thing. I need to find a model that represents space that does not exist at the moment. They are attempting to build it. But the confusion now is that when someone perceives that an image looks like a building, they think that is where I go. And that is a misunderstanding. And it's not anyone's fault. It comes from a place of not knowing. But to then come with conclusive evidence that AI is capable of this, or it's not good enough, or it's not there yet, then you don't understand really what's going on. That's a problem. You can't have conclusive evidence without having the understanding and the context of where things come from, which is what I spend most of my time doing with people. And that's, again, my wife often tells me, you got to meet people where they are. You can't make somebody feel lesser than because you know more than them. And I 100% agree. What I don't agree with is that you come up with definitive answers on something you don't understand. That I'm
I think it's also a consequence of the industry in itself not really having a clear, and I don't think they have a clear understanding of what AI is meant to do based off of its actual like programming. I think we've got this superficial idea of AI, thinking that it should solve maybe a rendering problem, a 3D visualization kind of problem. That so definitely looking at, as architects, we look at it more like we've drawn a sketch, we're plugging it into this AI, and this AI is going to complete the picture for us. And I think it's almost like a plug-in type of I don't want to use the word tool, but that's what we're seeing it as, is that we're plugging it in to assist us in the process of our design. And I think the one problem I end up having with AI sometimes is its limitations in creativity. And I wanted to maybe hear from you, what have you discovered when it comes to the creativity of AI? Can it be creative? Do you see its potential going in that direction? Or do you feel that your position is that it should always rely on the human's creativity, I guess, forever and a day?
I think it depends on what your definition of creativity is. I have said and long advocated for, in my opinion, and a lot of people might say it's a reductionist view, and I'm cool with that because this is my opinion, that creativity is a form of resourcefulness. And I think everyone that is creative knows that the products you create are as a result of your human experience, and it's greatly based on the work of other people, almost entirely, that you are learning from. And so if it's a method of you being resourceful, the more disparate the ideas that you combine, the more creative your work is perceived as. So if you had to think of artificial intelligence in that same method, it is doing that. It is taking very disparate ideas and putting it together. I feel the outputs that are being generated are not meant for production. They're meant to enhance your thinking. Now, people want production. Somebody wants to help them move faster. And that I don't believe is the most valuable use case. Although it can do it, if you look at these models, let's take a large language model, for example, like ChatGPT or Gemini. Disclaimer, I don't expect everyone to know this stuff, but you should kind of know it because it's out there, right? The information. So right,
yeah, definitely.
How a large language model works is that it does, based on a number of data sets it's been trained on, identify a certain type of pattern from there that gives it a world view. That doesn't mean that it's garbage in, garbage out. It's not your output's only as good as your input. That's not a fair statement to make when you are using a model. Yes, when you create a model, then you have to have really good inputs. Then you must clean the data and all of that. When you're building the model from scratch, yes. Not when you are using a model. A model is not meant for something in, something out. The model, in its architecture, in its design, in the structure of it, it has a thing called temperature, which is a coefficient to the next word that's coming out. And if the coefficient is high, the more unlikely word will appear next, and if it's low, the very likely word will appear next. It so happens that when you put this coefficient next to each word that's coming out, it starts to sound like a human being when it's producing the next word. And so this temperature is one part of it. It's a random coefficient assigned to make the words sound like they're interesting in the entirety of the sentence. But what you also might know or not know is about a generative adversarial network. It means that there's a generator and a discriminator inside these models. One produces an output, and the discriminator has to assess if the thing that's generated does resemble anything in its training data set. If it looks similar to that, then this discriminator says you're not allowed to leave the gate, you can't be output. Do you know what that means? That means that every output from the devices has to be unique. And so it's very, very difficult to then say, oh, cool, these programs can do anything replicable. And so if I want to use it in the creative part to do something that is deterministic, something that I can guarantee on, that's not helpful. But what it can do is, I have some ideas. I'm trying to flesh it out more. It can help me get to answers perhaps to some degree quicker, but also I can evaluate the depth of options, because me as a person, I understand what it is I'm going for, and I can see from the output of the machine whether those outputs are valuable to my creative process. The thing that we all should be focusing on is, how do I make better decisions, not can the machine do things for me? Because you have to decide in the outputs, what is it that's useful. And it is very, very capable of being creative, because it is roughly abstractly following the same sort of method that we would use when we created it. A lot of people are like, yeah, Akheel, you clearly don't know how creativity works. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that in principle, we are taking our experience and forming new outputs. In principle, that's what these machines are doing. And so if I work with a group or room of creators, I'm going to let everyone use their experiences to produce different outcomes. But when you're in a team of architects, not everybody's idea can contribute to the design unless there's some really good cohesive juice that can put it together. We usually choose one or two of the best. I don't, and that's a choice I make, right? Even though there's an abundance of ideas. Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah, no, it does.
It does. You know, what actually, like, you know, as we have this conversation and talk about this whole idea of the AI and the definitions of it and what it means in a broader sense, I just can't stop thinking about what we do. So, as much as we are all practitioners, we are all one way or the other also engaged in the academia, right? Veronica teaches, Chad does, I do, you know, you do. And I keep thinking, you know, are we really even like teaching the right thing? You know, like if we think about the curriculums that have been set for years, and if you look at where the industry is going now, one then will ask, like, should we then maybe say that fundamentals of coding or understanding of machine learning should be maybe a fundamental module or a course that exists in every architecture school in first year to understand what this is, what does this actually mean? But I think when you were even sharing, you know, the exercises you did at C, and you even mentioned that some of these problems were solved with basic tool like Rivet, you know, were solved with it. But I think the thinking behind it, you know, the complexity of it actually help the students to actually realize that actually we can solve it with this tool that we already have, but it's actually understanding the fundamentals of what the issues are. So I would like to sort of hear your thoughts, you know, as we sort of begin to wrap up and things like that, to just kind of get your understanding. What would you imagine the perfect scenario of an architecture school, you know, that looks into the future? What should be some of the things that should change in the curriculum, in the things that we teach? Do you think coding then becomes an important? Like, if I go to architecture school, I'll be doing maths or other things. Could it be substituted with coding, with other things? Like, what are your thoughts around these things?
Dixon, you and perhaps you've touched a very important point there. I think myself and maybe not so many people have had the very good fortune of writing university curriculum. So I was fortunate enough to write undergraduate and postgraduate curriculum, like the actual degree programs. And I was fortunate enough to not just write it, but also to then write the curricula attached to that. And I was also fortunate enough to then lecture it. And so I was responsible for starting up a more contemporary school of architecture in the private higher education field. And I, of course, have taken that the knowledge and the learnings I've had to run the professional education environment as a startup now as well. And the thing that I consistently advocated for is a technocentric view that is not divorced from people. And the things that we had as compulsory in the modules were programming. Programming, a lot of people might misunderstand to think that it's about the software, it's about how to think better. Because programming comes from a branch of mathematics called discrete mathematics. It really says, if this, then that. It teaches you how to make decisions really well. It is a truth-finding mechanism. Yes. That is what programming is. Now, when people say, oh, why are you putting programming into an architectural school? It's like, it's because it's part of thinking. If you had to go and look at philosophy and mathematics and language, you see the relationship is all about finding truth. And you start to realize, oh, okay, if they're all about finding truth, you can equate these things together. And actually, I had a really difficult time trying to integrate programming into architectural curriculum. And so I had to look into the theories quite well of parametricism, of information. And I had to look at these theories, stitch it together to an architectural audience to make them understand why is it relevant. And so I did introduce on a very fundamental level, programming be there, and you will get the very cute benefit of being able to talk to a computer. But the main thing is learning how to think better. And so that I'd say is fundamental. Next to being fundamental is first principles thinking. A lot of people might say, yeah, it's looking at obvious truths and building on there. That's not a good enough explanation. You know, first principles thinking is about having a map and being able to know all the routes to go through something based on where you're heading, but also based on where you're coming from. And so it really allows you to have a good context of how to create and further develop problems. So that's first principles thinking. And then the last thing I'd say, I don't think necessarily, I think what people have once mentioned to me is like, yeah, but Akheel, you want us to all become software developers. I'm saying, no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying you got to take the core of what I'm saying and use that. And that's why I mentioned in the very beginning, architects should be polymaths, because we can see a lot of things and string them together. So when you are doing machine learning, for example, you have the capability of understanding all of the technicalities. But here's the thing. When you do technical work is for proving a truth. Theoretical work is for understanding reality. Both of them deal with reality. One is to conceptualize it. The other one is to test it. Both are important. You can't say, only theory is important, or only. The fool is one that thinks one is more important over the other. They both are important. You have to have an idea, a hypothesis, and test it for truth. That's theory and practical. So I'll say, and the last one, if I'm mentioning learning machine learning, the reason you learn the technicalities is to understand it truthfully, more accurately. But the reasoning behind it is in machine learning is so that you intuitively understand this new technology and where you can apply it to actually solve problems. Otherwise, you're going to be running blind. And every time some new wave of something comes out, you're going to suddenly be enthralled with it and lose yourself completely. You have no grounding on where you are heading. So I think maybe that those are things in architecture curriculum. I was fortunate enough to actually write this into architecture curriculum. It does work. I don't know if all schools will adopt it, but I definitely think that any school that is concerned about the field and the students will do what I have done, because that is the place I was coming from when I wrote those things.
That is quite interesting. You know, every time we have a podcast, we always say to our guests, it feels like the time is so short. Like we would like to have like a part 2 or whatever in future. But I think it would be nice. We're gonna ask you like some rapid questions, you know, like which, you know, just with some short answers, you know, like for example, if I should ask you if there's any one book that you think that anyone who is interested in AI and in architecture should look at? What would that be, for example?
Good question. I'd say, apart from the book that I'm working on with some of my cohort, which will be called "What is
promote
AI?"
your book. Okay, I'll promote it.
There you go. What is AI? Understanding AI in the built environment. That's the book. Apart from that one, it's Melanie Mitchell's AI for Thinking Humans. It's so easily understandable what she's talking about that you will get all the technical context. It's maybe a 300-page book, but really well answered.
Okay, next one is name one skill every young architect should develop.
The ability to think better, and that skill would be logic and reasoning. And when I say logic, that's a very specific school of thought. It's like, how do you argue something better? It comes from discrete mathematics, and they're all part of those together. I'd say learning how to make better decisions, aka the technical explanation of that is programming.
That's in your book.
That's in the book too. In fact, it's in all my books. Good one there.
Okay. I think what, in the briefest way that you can, what do you see architecture in the future to be like?
I think it's the design of systems that combine data, people, and the environment.
Very concise.
I think
very concise. That's the subtitle of the book, right?
Oh, you guys are so good. I love how you just move on that idea and continue to go on my shameless self-promotion.
We're trying to be part authors of the book.
We have you. I will
Trying
get
to
you
be
there.
part authors of the book.
I will get you there. In fact, you'll be mentioned. In fact, we'll reference this episode so that everyone there can watch in frame and hear how great this conversation was with you guys.
Great. If we were to sit down again in 10 years, what do you think would have fundamentally changed about architecture, creativity, and the human role in design?
If all the work that I'm doing now comes to fruition, my son in the next 10 years' time will be roughly about 10 years old. And if I chatted to him and my son told me, "Dad, I'd like to join the built environment," I'll say, if everything goes according to plan, I support you, I give you my blessing, because that's a field of polymaths, people that not only are able to change the world in meaningful ways, but are also able to look after themselves while doing it in various capacities, economic, mental health, progression and growth. And I would hope that would be the case in the next 10 years, because a lot of the things that people who care about the field, they often turn to technology to help make that change. And if all of us are successful, I think that's the kind of field we'll be looking at in the next 10 years. The built environment being a healthy place that is moving towards prosperity.
Wow, well said.
Thanks.
Well, I think that's it. That was the rapid session. putting you on, keeping you on your feet. But yeah, actually, it was such a enlightening conversation. I think there was a lot of technical terms, and I think those technical terms were easily digestible because I think because you're coming from the field of architecture, so you've managed to break them down in a way that architects, I think, can understand and grasp. So it didn't sound like something that was too high level or something that was too hard to almost grapple with and understand. I think that's probably where you're going with when it comes to the work that you're doing, is that you're also trying to make it digestible for the plain Jane and the human, which is actually quite commendable. And I think would like to just continue to support you on this journey. But yeah, I think from us, this is how we are now concluding. And I'll leave Dixon to say his famous words.
Cool. I can't wait. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Akheel. We really appreciate your time, and I think we will definitely touch base again and have conversations again in frame. And once again, thank you for being in frame.
Ah!